After illegal drugs and black market weapons, the buying and selling of people is the world's largest illegal trade. People want drugs, people want guns, and people want people. And they want people so much that the human trafficking industry is growing faster than any other criminal industry, and it's raking in around $40 billion every year. That's $40 billion made from the buying and selling of human beings. This isn't limited to the seedy back streets of Bangkok or the sweaty brothels of Brazil. People are being recruited in countries all around the world and transported through countries all around the world to end up transferred in countries all around the world. Anya is 20. She's from Romania. She'd been struggling to find work after dropping out of high school early, and her brother's girlfriend told her she could get a nannying job in Germany. A woman picked her up and drove her and another girl headed for a similar job, the 18 hours to Munich. As soon as they crossed into Germany, the driver took both their passports and IDs. They were locked in an apartment and abused, physically, verbally and psychologically, and transferred around different cities over several months. During this time, they were introduced to the job they were actually recruited for, prostitution. Forced to prostitute themselves to numerous clients every day, the money they earned was taken by the trafficker. Trapped by the apparent debt she had incurred in being transported and threatened with harm to her family, Anya was never able to act on any opportunity to escape. Karu is 7. He was sold to traffickers by his parents from the slum in which they lived in Mumbai, India. A man had offered them around $30 for Karu, suggesting that he could pay this off by working in the man's restaurant. Desperate for income and believing their son would have a stable job, they agreed. But instead, Karu was smuggled on a train and spent 2 weeks being transported to Rajasthan, where he worked for 14 hours a day sewing beads onto saris. There were over 60 other children along with Karu, used to do such delicate work because their hands were small enough. The children were beaten and starved if they didn't produce enough work in a day or they tried to escape. Karu's eyesight disintegrated rapidly due to the strain they were under to concentrate on sewing. He never saw a cent of the money he worked for, nor his parents, ever again. They might be vulnerable because of their lack of education, employment, or awareness regarding trafficking schemes. They might be looking for any way to be released from the poverty in which they live. There might be conflict or natural disasters which make the community an unstable and unpredictable environment. Or they might be unable to speak up for themselves because of their gender, age, dependency on others, or due to mental or physical disability. Their vulnerability is exploited because there is a demand to be filled in brothels and pornography, in manufacturing, on construction sites and in agriculture, as household servants in underground mines and armed conflict, doing the jobs that no one else wants to do. Their vulnerability is exploited because they can't speak up for themselves, lacking legal status and language skills, and there's not always someone to speak up on their behalf. Governments don't want to acknowledge the occurrence of trafficking in their country for fear of adverse publicity, declination of foreign exchange and loss of tourist dollars. In many countries, laws regarding trafficking are only relevant to women, especially those in sexually exploitative circumstances. And even when trafficked people do come to the attention of authorities, they're often treated as illegal immigrants or become subjects of humiliation and discrimination due to their trade. Last year, something like 800,000 people were trafficked across international borders, but that number could have been up to 2 million. In fact, add another 10 million for those currently living in slavery, having already been trafficked. But on second thoughts, just forget those statistics, because the reality is, no one knows the numbers. This is a crime that is hidden, secret, underground. Cases go unreported, and the culprits remain at large. How do you fight a battle in the dark? But as overwhelming as the darkness is, the truth remains that even in its depth, the smallest amount of light can be seen. And if this light can be kindled, if the flames that are already persisting to glow in the shadows can ignite others, slowly the darkness will be driven out of the corners. Instinctively, the rescue and rehabilitation of trafficked people seems like the most urgent action to take, ensuring that their immediate needs are met: safety, health, counselling, and the opportunity to return or remain where they are, instead of being treated as aliens. This will require governments to be willing to sacrifice their own good for the good of their citizens, to understand that tourist dollars gained at the cost of a young girl's freedom are not worth having, to acknowledge the evil within their own borders before shifting the blame elsewhere, prioritising the prosecution of traffickers and their accomplices, clearly showing perpetrators that their crimes will not be tolerated. The UN needs to continue its responsibility in calling the international community to account in uniting against these crimes. And while these steps are vital, they can only thrive when the heart of the issue is approached. Demand must be terminated. Clients of trafficked people and those investing in sex tourism should be charged with similar laws to trafficking offenders. Manufacturing and commodity industries need to maintain safe working conditions and proper wages so that citizens can work without being forced. And by addressing the systems that feed people's vulnerability, such as poverty, unemployment, and lack of education, traffickers will find themselves powerless to invade their potential victims' lives. Mai is 12 and lives in rural northern Thailand. With pressure to invest in an increasingly industrialised economy, her parents struggle to provide for their family by traditional methods. Mai is approached by her school teacher with an offer to work in Chiang Mai as a waitress at the end of the year. But a locally based NGO has been established in Mai village and has been educating families on the risks and realities of trafficking practices. The NGO investigates the teacher's claim and finds him to be involved with a trafficking group. Local police are notified, and the teacher is promptly charged with being an accomplice to human trafficking. Not only this, but the NGO is training families in cultivating subsistence gardens and practicing traditional herbal medicine, allowing for the provision of food and employment within the village context. Mai and her family are protected from trafficking and slavery with the help of their own local community and the wider government. By protecting potential victims and prosecuting perpetrators, the risk and profitability of trafficking is decreased. Mai's story is an example to the globe. Human trafficking is a rigid and entrenched industry, complex and destructive, but it is not inevitable. Even in the darkest corners, there is still hope.